Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
This is Ghost Talk with 187 PI. Sit back and prepare yourselves for an adventure into the paranormal world with host Shelly Robertson and 187 PI research team. Ghost Talk is broadcasting live from Ohio's most haunted jail. Learn about their ongoing research at the jail and abroad, investigation techniques, and their personal encounters. Here is your host of Ghost Talk and 187 PI founder, Shelly Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Talk Radio. We have a fantastic and interesting show planned for you tonight, and we're coming to you live from the Haunted Old Paulding County Jail. I want everyone to make sure you get logged into chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can ask us any questions you might have or add some haunting stories of your own. Tonight, Kristen Boyd is here with me, and we will be discussing a super interesting topic, and that is haunted hospitals and asylums. Hello and welcome, Kristen.
Hey, everyone.
Well, as most of you listeners may already know, hospitals and asylums, especially the ones of the past, they didn't always follow humane rules and conditions, and they did experimental and torturous procedures and used just as lewd medications on a lot of the patients, with the end results leaving many incapacitated or even worse, causing death. Some of these places even paid people to bring in sick family members, and that way they could continue with these horrific practices. Overcrowding was also very common, leaving patients to sit in their own feces for days, maybe going without food or water. And they were even placed in hallways and basements, and sometimes were forgotten about altogether until they were eventually found dead. Just horrific. Fortunately, most of these places shut down to either lack of funding or overcrowding, or simply the public finding out about the conditions and experiments that the patients had to endure. And the outcry from the public forced law enforcement and government officials to step in and close these places down for good. Many of the buildings still exist today, some still being used, while others lay vacant and in disrepair. Then there are some that found their fate to the wrecking ball and are now just horrific stories that are passed down throughout the generations. As one can imagine, the pain and suffering and fear that the patients experienced was beyond our imaginations. I know I couldn't imagine some of those stories that I've heard, and all that emotion being endured behind the building walls was most definitely, I'm sure, left its imprints on many of them, and that's how we get the hauntings, right? The following that we're going to be talking about are some of those buildings, along with a brief history and the tortured spirits that still remain bound to those places today. So we're going to go first, since we are in Ohio. That is our jail's home state. We're going to go to the Athens Mental Hospital in Athens, Ohio, of course. It was built in January of 1874, and this building was originally known as Athens Lunatic Asylum, but it was renamed over 10 different times before becoming what we know it as today. The particular hospital housed individuals that had an array of illnesses.
Or so-called illnesses.
These would range from being slightly depressed to rebellious teenagers, veterans of war, to violent criminals and severely mentally ill patients. These patients would endure practices such as lobotomies, hydrotherapy, electroshock therapy, and being physically restrained. And they also were experimented on by using various psycho drugs, that altered your mental state. All of which has now been considered harmful, if not inhumane, right? I don't know. Has anybody had a lobotomy lately?
I would sure hope not.
The asylum first made the news, of course, in 1977 when one of its patients consisted of a guy named Billy Milligan, and he was a multi-personality rapist, folks. He was reported to have 24 different personalities in total. That is just
a lot.
Yes. Yet again, in December of 1978, the asylum became familiar in the public's eye when a patient named Margaret Schilling disappeared. A maintenance worker found her body over a month later in an abandoned ward that had once been used for infectious patients. She was found completely naked with her clothes neatly folded next to her body. As odd and suspicious as that may have seemed, you won't believe this, folks, the autopsy report came back that she had died of heart failure.
Sounds fishy to me.
Yeah, fishy to me too. What even more is the permanent stain that her body left behind. There's a clear imprint there of her hair and her body that is very still visible to this day, even though there's been numerous attempts to remove it. Athens Mental Hospital officially closed down in 1993 and stood vacant for several years before restoration began. When it was completed, the building was renamed The Ridges, is now part of Ohio University. As for paranormal activity, well, the infamous Margaret Schilling still resides and is considered to be the most famous ghost at the university. People have claimed to have seen her staring down at them from the window of the room where her body was found. She's also been witnessed seen trying to escape the building. And she's also known to wander other various areas throughout the night, making her presence known to many, many people. Yet another former patient, there were several that reside within the buildings, reports people working at the buildings, paranormal investigators. They report seeing figures standing in empty wings of former hospital rooms. They hear disembodied voices and the squeaking of gurneys throughout the rooms and halls. Yet, let me tell you, others claim to have seen strange lights and hearing patient screams that seem to echo through the walls. Even more terrifying, that once in life, as also with death, people seeing what appears to be patients still shackled to the walls within the basement. These spirits are thought to be those who suffered extreme torture at the hand of the staff in the asylum. Now imagine doing a paranormal investigation and,
catching a glimpse of something like that.
How horrific.
For sure.
How horrific. This next one, folks, is a very well-known lunatic asylum that many ghost hunting shows have visited and aired on TV, and which you yourselves are also probably very familiar with. And where are you taking us, Kristen?
Well, we're going to West Virginia.
Okay.
To the Transalganian Lunatic Asylum.
Oh, very, very popular place.
Very popular. Well, opening in 1864 with a maximum capacity of 250 patients, Transalgania, ironically, sits on 666 acres of land and besides one other building, is the largest building constructed of handcrafted stone masonry in the world. The walls of this building were built to be 2.5 feet thick.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine.
Well, it was a design made to specifically muffle out the screams of the mentally ill people.
Well, it'd either do that or it'd echo horrendously, you know?
Yeah, that it would. The asylum was built and promised to help treat mentally ill people in a decent and humane manner. But unfortunately, this was all a facade. By the 1950s, the asylum housed almost 2,400 patients.
Holy smokes.
And it was only supposed to be 250.
That's craziness.
Many of them were unwanted and abandoned by their family members. Now, since they were overcrowded, more than 10 times their capacity, beds were used by 3 different patients over the course of a day, as they were forced to sleep in shifts so others could attempt to get rest.
Wow.
Now, they were also one of the asylums that actually offered money to anyone who dropped off a patient to them. Now, that alone, that's just crazy to me.
It is, because you would be taking any old buddy. Maybe
Yes.
you didn't like a family member and like, they're
Exactly.
crazy, pay me,
Yep,
you know?
and dropped them off.
Oh my gosh.
It is rumored that many of the so-called mentally ill patients that were dropped off for a cash payout never actually showed signs of having
And
any
I
serious
can believe
illness.
that.
Yeah,
I can
I've
believe
heard
that. Mhm.
Many terrible stories. Well, sadistic experimental medical procedures were performed regularly, and as so many of them at the time did, they consisted once again of lobotomies that were performed with ice picks, electroshock therapy, and solitary confinement. However, this particular asylum deepened their cruel experiments and intentions. Not only were they placed in confinement, but during that time, which could literally span months, they were likely chained to the walls as well.
That's just horrific.
Very cruel. Well, they also locked their patients in small cages or cribs. They whipped them, immersed them in ice baths, placed them in insulin comas, and subjected them to bloodletting.
Oh my goodness.
More than likely, due to the asylum's horrific ways, there were numerous reports of suicides, murders, and rape as the conditions and overcrowding grew intolerable. The Charleston Gazette actually did an investigative piece on one of them and found it to be dirty and unkempt, with many patients left naked and confined to dirty wards and bathrooms smeared with feces.
Oh, disgusting.
Unfortunately, it wasn't until a follow-up report was done in 1992 that officials began to put pressure on the closure of the facility, which didn't happen until 1994.
It took them long enough, didn't it?
Way too long.
Mm.
The facility was bought in 2007 by Joe Jordan, who has it open for tours to help fund restorations. Now, of course, these tours consist of those of the paranormal kind, as it no doubt should with what is rumored to take place within the building. Hearing squeaky wheels rolling around on the tiled hallways is just one of the very common occurrences that takes place. Seeing ghosts literally walk through walls. Remember, the walls are 2.5 feet thick.
Yeah.
Not to seeing balls of light that move rapidly down the hallways. Seeing and hearing doors open and close by themselves. Hearing hysterical laughter come from old empty patient rooms. To seeing an entity known as the Creeper crawling across the floor towards you have all been witnessed and recorded. Now, there are resident spirits that still reside and make themselves known to visitors as well. A ghost named Ruth, who in life hated men, carried that hate also in death. Well,
that could be pretty powerful, right?
It could be.
Yeah.
Now, it has been witnessed that she throws things at men when they come near her.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, there are 2 other ghosts that reside on the 3rd floor, a man named Big Jim and a nurse named Elizabeth. But the most famous of all the spirits that reside here is the spirit of Lily. Lily wears a white dress and appears to be roughly around the age of 9.
The woman in white again. There she
Always.
makes appearance.
Oh, wait, this time a girl in white, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is believed that she was the daughter of a patient that had given birth to her while locked up in the asylum.
Oh, what a terrible life.
It'd be a horrific life. She spent every day of her short life locked up and confined within the horrors of what took place around her. It is said that Lily likes to talk, roll balls along the floor, switch flashlights on, play with music boxes, and has even been captured giggling, which I'm sure is a bittersweet thing to hear for a young girl who had to endure a short, trauma-filled life behind the walls of one of the most horrific mental asylums ever to exist.
Absolutely.
Well, next, we're going to bring you back to Ohio. And Shelly, where's that?
Oh, back to Ohio.
Back to Ohio.
Ohio is not short of hauntings.
You're not.
We're going to go to the Dunham Recreation Facility, and that sits on 115 acres. Okay, folks? This facility was once home to the county's first tuberculosis hospital, then known as Dunham Hospital, which opened in 1897 and operated until 1973. It consisted of 14 buildings that could hold 600 patients, 16 doctors, 150 nurses, 12 technicians, and an additional 250 other employees. So it was a big operation, okay? The hospital had an underground tunnel system that was used to transport the recently deceased so other patients wouldn't become distraught seeing all the deaths occurring around them. And I think that some of these asylums and sanatoriums were famous for just that same thing, these tunnels to remove the bodies. Now, during its operation, thousands of patients died within the building from horrific symptoms. Tuberculosis puts its unfortunate victims through, right? And during the later years of the hospital's operations, they also experienced a series of smallpox epidemics and yellow fever, which only added to the overall death toll that the building had to endure. So lots and lots of people died due to all kinds of different things.
Lots of suffering, for sure.
Absolutely. Now, eventually, of course, vaccines were made for these diseases, and the need for such a hospital diminished, creating its doors to finally close in 1973. Now, the buildings were eventually bought and made into the Dunham's Recreation Facility, which is known for its community programs. Unfortunately, the underground tunnels were blocked off to public use due to the instability of the roof and having asbestos, okay? But it's still said that the spirits of the deceased that traveled the tunnel's path in death are still very much alive and active in the spirit world, right? Now, while producing a film within the tunnels and taking photos in the dark, there had been an image captured, and the image resembles an old Dunham hospital nurse having the hat and all. Also, while in the tunnels, fake chattering has been heard, resembling conversations that may have taken place, among the once hospital staff. It is said that pretty much all the employees of the facility have either seen or heard the ghosts from the former hospital. Many have heard, and they hear unexplained noises, see flashes of light, experience doors slamming shut, and have had the feeling that something or someone is near, and they hear mumbled voices, footsteps that seem to be right behind you, and they've even experienced drops in temperature and cold spots. If that isn't enough, there have also been witnessed accounts of figures roaming the hall, hearing the sounds of coughing that come from literally nowhere, and the spotting of old-time nurses that disappear almost before you have time to register what you've just witnessed. Needless to say, one must not be faint of heart to step foot on these premises. And with that, folks, we'll be right back after this short break with more Ghost Talk. You're listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The opinions of hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinion of this network.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, LTD, and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me is your host, Shelly Robertson, and joining me tonight is Kristen Boyd. We are coming to you live from the Haunted Old Paulding County Jail in Paulding, Ohio. If you just tuned in, we invite you all to join us in chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can ask us any questions you may have. If you missed the first part of the episode, no worries, folks. You can catch the full show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio at your leisure. Actually, there's a few others, so more than likely, wherever you want to be, we're there. So you can catch our full show archive then. Before the break, we were discussing haunted hospitals and asylums, and so, Kristen, where are you going to take us next?
Well, I'm going to take you to Michigan.
Oh, well, that's our neighbor.
It is. To Northville State Hospital.
Okay.
Opening its doors in 1952, Northville was considered one of the most modern mental hospitals in the United States. They actually promoted art and music as a way to treat patients who could then practice playing a musical instrument or perform within plays. Much better than all the torture.
Oh,
places.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, they could also study trades or even work in the hospital's facilities. Now, unfortunately, priorities shifted in the 1970s, making Northville steadily decline until it was forced to shut down in the early 2000s. As most know, abandoned buildings attract curious minds.
Oh, yes, they do.
And this hospital was definitely no different, with many people even being persecuted for trespassing.
And that's out there, folks. Any place that we talk about on the air, please don't go there unless you get permission or buy a ticket or whatever it takes so you don't end up going to jail.
Well, of course, even all this trespassing and persecution, it did not stop people from continuing to try to sneak in. And with the successful ones, well, they left a few stories to pass on to curious minds like ours.
Oh, I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, indeed, Northville was haunted, with the most prominent of all areas being the underground tunnels.
And there we are, tunnels again, folks.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, transported the dead from the building.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the trespassers who did manage to gain a paranormal experience stated within the tunnels they could hear footsteps, whispering voices, chains clanking, and even reports of feeling someone, or better yet, something, breathing on them while walking through the dark tunnels. Now, to everyone's surprise, the building was actually demolished in 2018, leaving just the whispers of rumored haunts to pass down on to other generations.
And that is something. Some of these places that were so, fascinating and great buildings of its time period that have actually been demolished.
Kind of sad, honestly.
It is. And so kudos to everyone out there who is acquiring these old buildings and trying to bring them back to life. This next place we're going to go to is the Danvers State Lunatic Asylum, and then that's in Massachusetts, okay? This place was more known as the Witch's Castle. Danvers was built in 1878 on the site, get this, folks, that was originally in Salem Village, okay? And the first actual location of the Salem witch trials that occurred in 1692. How fascinating. Now, some stuff has to be going on here, right?
Absolutely.
So, by the late 1940s and 50s, okay, the facility housed more than 2,000 patients when its total capacity was built for only 500. Now, we heard that before, where they've doubled and tripled and quadrupled their capacity, right? The basement was even converted to be used to hold patients during this time of severe overcrowding, okay? Things eventually became so bad that many of the patients were being severely neglected, with some of them found being dead days to even weeks after they'd actually passed.
That's crazy.
That's pitiful.
Yes, that's
weeks. They didn't even
crazy.
know it for weeks. It wasn't long due to this overcrowding and lack of funding that the asylum had to be shut down. And that's been often the case with many of these asylums, right? It officially closed its doors in 1992 and was later demolished in 2006. Before the building was demolished, many investigators and curious people paid a visit to the abandoned asylum, and many leaving with stories to share with others. Reports of hearing disembodied voices, footsteps, and doors opening and closing were very common. More occurrences including seeing apparitions and shadow figures. Some even heard patients wailing and begging for help, right? Even after the building was torn down, folks, people say that the grounds itself continue to have an eerie atmosphere, and this atmosphere just surrounds the whole place where this building had been built, and it's still a popular place to visit, and it's often used as a reference point for many. Now, the movie Session 9 was filmed on the old asylum grounds, and it is rumored that the H.P. Lovecraft, he used the history of the place to inspire the book Arkham Sanatorium.
That's very interesting.
It's very interesting. So, where are we going next?
Well, we're going to head over to Utah.
Oh, Utah.
To Old Tool Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This started off as a family house being built in 1897, but by 1913 was transformed into what was known as the county poorhouse, where elderly people with special needs were taken care of. In 1953, it once again changed names to Toole Hospital, in which it went through a huge renovation to update to be able to accommodate more patients, adding bathrooms and a morgue.
A morgue, oh boy.
By 2001, Toole Hospital was closed down and left vacant. One of the most significant things about the Toole Hospital was before it was officially closed down, Stephen King made it a filming spot for his movie, The Stand.
Oh, and I saw that movie too. I am such a fan of Stephen King.
Oh, yes. Well, it wasn't just Stephen King who placed his mark for filming here. Now, the movie The Fastest Indian was also shot here. Now, this movie was a true story of motorcycle legend Burt Murnau.
Wow.
Now, needless to say, the building hosts many spirits and strange occurrences, some of them being shadows, apparitions, mists, orbs, and disembodied voices. There are many known residents here as well. Richard, James, Ned, Peter, and Jessica, who is a child, are all very active and make themselves known to visitors. However, the most prominent of them all is an Alzheimer's patient known as Wes. His favorite site being that of his original room where he lived once as a resident. Samuel Lee himself, the man who originally built the house, has also been sighted wandering the halls. The most chilling of all occurrences recorded within this building was that of his child's voice uttering, "Daddy shot, sorry." It is said that this comes from a child who was accidentally shot by his father, which is both very tragic and sad.
Oh, yes, that would be so sad. I mean, you hear stories like that, and when you go to places to investigate, and maybe you might gather a little evidence that might either coincidentally or actually coincide with some of these stories.
Yeah.
It's like chilling. It's goosebump inducing, isn't it?
And that's heart-wrenching right there.
It really is. This next place we're going to go to, friends, is the Byberry Mental Hospital in Pennsylvania. And of course, you know, Pennsylvania has no shortage of haunted places either. Now, this place was once used as a farm by Holmesburg Prison. Byberry Mental Hospital was officially opened in the 1920s, and it ended up being known for the use of extensive and largely unregulated medical testing on their patients. And that seems to be the norm back in those days.
I don't understand what the fascination of torturing people was.
I don't know. They thought they were researching, I guess. And as for many, of course, just like many other places, the lack of funds ended up leaving Byberry in a major state of disrepair, forcing patients to survive. Now, just imagine this, folks. Patients to survive without clothing, insufficient food, and sewage-filled hallways that were also used as bedrooms for the maxed-out occupancy of the hospital. Now, just imagine you or your loved ones having to live in these conditions. It was in 1990 that the state closed down the facility for its inhumane conditions, of course. Now, the abandoned building became one of the most popular spots in the country for what eventually became to be called urban explorers, okay? It was a kind of community that was developed with vagrants, gangs, satanic cults, and even just former visitors who were seeking shelter. Finally, in 2006, the building was demolished, forcing all who sought refugee there, forced them to leave, you know, kind of like the homeless and stuff like that. They just took over the building and they made it their own little community. But before its demise, okay, there was rumors that a ghost of a mentally deranged and brutally violent resident who resided within the basement where he'd been seen holding a knife while he awaited the next person to come in his way, okay, in hopes of cutting the throats of any curious explorer. So people have seen his apparition, and I think I've never seen such a scary apparition or even photographed one or anything. I think that would be
I might actually run from that.
Frightening.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be frightening? People also spoke of hearing human-like growls throughout the old building, with some even receiving physical scratches that would just appear on their skin. And how many times do we come across this? People getting scratched, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the next place we're going to go?
Well, we're going to go to Alton Mental Health Hospital in Illinois.
Oh, yeah. Alton's got quite a few little nuggets of haunted places there. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's check this out. Founded in the early 1900s, Alton is still in operation today, with standard practices being the use of EKG machines and housing primarily court-ordered patients. However, back in the day, that was most definitely not the case. Patients then were subjected to electric shock therapy, lobotomies, and cold water treatments, which, as we have stated, are standard practices and completely acceptable during that time.
I know, that's just terrible.
Now, in fact, in the 1930s, cold water treatments reached a total of 65,000 hours in just a single year.
Oh my gosh.
Then in 1954 alone, 39 patients were recorded as receiving lobotomies.
Oh, geez.
Now, it is stated that this place holds the tortured souls of many past patients. Unusual noises have been heard, along with faint whispers and doors slamming shut. Photos have captured a man with a tortured expression on his face. But the most notable paranormal encounter would involve some nurses. A nurse was on one of the floors when she heard someone whisper, "Who's that?"
Gee.
And she was completely alone on that floor.
Mm-mm-mm.
Not long after her report came one from another nurse who said she heard the exact same thing while alone on the same floor. And it just so happens it was in the exact same area as the other nurse as well.
Fascinating. So somebody's definitely in the area.
Well, moving on to our next location.
And that would be the Rolling Hills Asylum in New York. It first began as the Genesee County Poor Farm in 1827, which was pretty much a dumping ground for the outcasts of society, folks. Widows, orphans, and the severely mental ill, along with criminals, were housed here and were all referred to as inmates. Throughout all of its years in operation, the building has served as an infirmary, an orphanage, tuberculosis hospital, and a nursing home. There have been more than 1,700, I believe it was, documented deaths accounted for, along with hundreds more of unclaimed bodies, many of which are believed to be buried on the same site, right? Many reports of paranormal activity have been reported here. These include disembodied voices, doors slamming, footsteps, full-bodied apparitions, shadow people, accounts of being touched, and lots of EVP have all been recorded. There are hot spots, so to speak, within the building, and they include Hattie's room. On the first floor, there's this room of a former patient, she's known as Hattie, who has been recorded several times saying hello to visitors. Then we have Roy's room, who was also a former patient who is believed to have suffered from giantism and has been seen as around 7 to 8 feet tall and is what they refer to him as. He's a shadow man. He is everyone's favorite apparition within the building. They consider him the gentle giant. Now, the next hot spot in this Rolling Hills Asylum is a shadow hallway. It's located on the 6th floor and used to be the men's dormitory. A lot of shadow people are witnessed within this area. Some look like normal human shadows, while others have been found to crawl like on the floor quickly towards you, more like what the people call creepers.
The creepers, yeah.
Yeah. The morgue is where ghostly voices can be heard and things are moved around by unseen forces. People who have visited this area have reported being shoved and knocked off their feet, like completely knocked down. The good news is, for all you paranormal thrill seekers out there, this building still stands and is open for ghost hunters and tours. And with that, folks, we'll be back with more ghost talk after this short break. You're listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello, everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, also heard on WCEC-FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, LTD, and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me is your host, Shelly Robertson, and joining me tonight is Kristen Boyd. If you just tuned in, we invite you all to join us in chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can ask us any questions you may have. If you missed the first part of the show, no worries, folks. You can catch us almost anywhere you are. We're there. You can catch our show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Before the break, of course, all evening we've been talking about haunted hospitals and asylums. And this next one, I know lots of people have heard about. Where are we going, Kristen?
Well, we're going to travel over to Pennsylvania to Penhurst Asylum.
Oh, yes, that's such a popular place.
It sure is. Well, Penhurst opened in 1908 and took in mainly people with physical and mental disabilities, but they also housed with them what they referred to, as some others did as well, inmates. These inmates did include criminals, but also under that category was orphans, immigrants, and pretty much anyone else that had no other place to reside. Now, Penhurst rested on 120 acres and housed more than 10,000 patients at any given time.
Oh, wow.
They were also a self-sufficient facility with their own power plant and other amenities. The facility eventually began being accused of dehumanization, and by the 1960s was overcrowded, underfunded, and falling apart.
And that's just like every other place of those, you know? They're all falling into that category.
They sure are. However, and unfortunately, it remained open until 1986, when even more accusations arose, including patient abuse, which ultimately closed its doors. Now, the building was left abandoned along with the patient's belongings and medical equipment, and of course, became a very popular attraction for paranormal seekers.
Oh, yes. And they have paracons and everything else
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. While ghost enthusiasts have experienced sudden changes in temperature, unexplained movement of objects, and objects being hurled across rooms, along with being physically pushed by something unseen. EVPs are a very common occurrence here as well. Just a few of what has been caught include voices saying, "Go away," "I'll kill you," "Why don't you leave?" "We're upset," and "I'm scared."
Wow.
Now the good news is that Pennhurst is open to the public, and they offer photography tours, historical tours, and of course our favorite, paranormal tours for anyone interested in getting their own personal experience.
Yeah, and a lot of these big asylums that are still standing, they do offer the history tours, they offer paranormal tours, and they are really a great thing to visit and just go learn about the history and to see the fantastic architecture of these buildings. Oh my gosh.
One of my favorites.
Oh my gosh, they are so amazing. So I'm going to tell you, folks, we've saved one of the most fascinating ones on our list tonight for last. And by all means, don't get me wrong, there are many haunted hospitals and asylums along with their stories out there. We couldn't possibly cover them all in one show, okay? But this one is probably our favorite on the list tonight.
Yes.
And on a future show, we may cover some more, and we'll have a favorite that night. But tonight, our favorite, I think, would be Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, this opened in the early 1900s, okay? And Waverly started out as Waverly School, and it eventually evolved into a hospital in 1908. It was originally designed to house 40 to 50 tuberculosis patients, and that's before they built on. If you have been there or seen the building now, it's just massive, right? So when TB became a full-blown epidemic, the hospital was expanded to house 400 patients and was considered to be one of the best facilities of that time. And that's where it brings you to this massive building that it is today. And my golly,
phenomenal.
It is fascinating. It was also a self-contained community with its own zip code. It also had its own post office, water treatment plant, and they even grew their own food, raised their own meat, and maintained many of their everyday life necessities. However, by 1961, Waverly had to shut its doors due to the discovery of the cure for tuberculosis. In 1962, the building was reopened briefly as Woodhaven Medical Service, a geriatric facility, but it was closed by the state in 1981, once again leaving the building abandoned. Over several decades, Waverly would remain vacant and slowly succumb to vandalism damage. And it was almost condemned until the building was saved and purchased in 2001. The buyers are both historical and paranormal enthusiasts, and they instantly began renovation plans. Both historical and paranormal tours are conducted to help with restoration projects of the building. You can go to therealwaverlyhills.com, I think is the website. And if you want to attend any of their guided tours or book the building for a paranormal investigation, you really will not be disappointed.
No.
The owners, they have recently made plans, and they're trying to develop Waverly Hills into a hotel and conference center. And I will tell you, if Tina gets that accomplished, I will definitely book a night.
Oh, yes. I'm really excited about that, actually. Right, well, Waverly has been a filming site for many TV shows, including Ghost Adventures, Scariest Places on Earth, and Celebrity Paranormal.
Oh, yeah. It's a popular place.
Yes. Well, rumors and sightings include doppelgangers, ghostly children, demonic forces, shadow figures, slamming doors, and mysterious footsteps. Now, room 502 is considered a room of much activity and despair. In 1928, the head nurse was found dead. It was rumored she had become pregnant and was depressed and was found hanging from the light fixture. Now, almost 4 years later, another nurse, she jumped to her death from this room as well.
Oh, yeah. How tragic, the stories. And they got a picture of the one nurse in that room. And when I was there and looked at that picture, I was just so... a sorrow came. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, the creeper is a common and frightening entity that resides within Waverly and has unfortunately been seen by many people. It is described as a dark, terrifying entity that crawls along the floors and the walls. Many believe it is a demonic spirit. People that have encountered it are said to automatically be filled with terror and dread. Now, one of the most well-known spirits that resides at Waverly is that of a young boy named Timmy. Now, Timmy is said to be around 6 or 7 years old and passed away from the terrible symptoms of TB. Many EVPs have captured Timmy's small voice, and if you want to get his attention, it is said that he likes to interact by rolling balls around on the floor.
Yeah, and what's ironic about that is, excuse me, I was booked the Waverly Hills for a private investigation, and we were in one of the hallways, and I was just snapping pictures one after another, you know?
Yeah.
How you do your cycles. And first couple of pictures I snapped, nothing unusual. Third picture I snapped, there was a ball in the floor in the hallway where I was.
Right.
Next picture, nothing.
Huh.
This was a phantom ball. And not only that, we have captured the apparition of a little girl in between, on the 5th floor in the hallway between the psychiatric ward and the children's ward. Just absolutely, it's got a lot of activity, and it's absolutely
every floor
amazingly haunted. It's amazingly haunted. So next, folks, I mean, we need to leave the hospitals tonight, but I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here at the Old Paulding County Jail, located in Paulding, Ohio. Of course, we do have the Escapes games running this month, and this month's theme is probably one of the most fun for us to put on.
It is.
And it's the Big Top Circus. For more information on our escape games, go to jailbreakcode9.com, and that's the number 9 in the name, jailbreakcode9.com. You can find out about all the different themes that we run here at the jail, book your sessions, and get all the information you need. We also have a full schedule of events for this summer and fall that are happening here at the jail, and you can see what all's going on at our website, 187pi.com. We have many dates still available for the remaining of this year for our private paranormal investigations, as well as all the information that you will need to schedule a private investigation for you and your paranormal team. I will also mention that all available dates for 2019 have been posted for private investigations at the jail. No other dates will be added to the list. So if you would like to experience in a private setting some of the hauntings we experience here on a daily basis, just go to 187pi.com, click on Investigate the Old Jail, look at the available dates, and book your session today. Tomorrow night is kind of an exciting night. We have a mystical reading night here at the Old Paulding Jail. Doors for this event open at 5 p.m. If you have any areas of concern in your life right now, we have experienced and certified readers in the specialties of tarot cards, palm reading, and crystal ball readings. You can find more info on this event on our Facebook page. Just type into the search feature 187PI. Will pop right up. You can hit the follow and you can stay up to date on all the events and our shows, radio shows we have coming up. I gotta tell you about mystical reading nights. Actually, the slots are filling up, so any of you locals there, grab them while you can. There's only a few remaining appointment slots left for the readings night tomorrow night. Next weekend is kind of exciting. 187PI team will be heading across the pond to Canada. We have the old Paulding County Jail, but we're going to see what it's like to see the big giant old jail in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. So we're pretty excited about that trip next week. So nothing's going on at the jail. We're traveling abroad to investigate some in Canada. August 31st, we have ghost hunt weekends here at the jail, heading up an exciting night of ghost hunting. So if you would like to experience the activity that happens here at the jail, just go to ghosthuntweekends.com. That address again is ghosthuntweekends.com to reserve your spots. Tickets are limited to a small amount, so get your ticket now while there's still just a couple of left. Now, here's what we have coming up on our wonderful network, WBHM-DB.com. And you guys need to follow the website and add it to your Facebook following list because we have some exciting show lineups. And if you follow WBHM-DB Facebook page, you can stay up to date on all the upcoming shows. Sunday nights at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Fate Magazine Radio with host Kat Hobson. And remember, folks, Fate Magazine has been around since 1948. Fantastic show. Kat has some amazing guests on the show. Monday nights at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we have the Paranormal Pride Show with host Denise Pridemore. Tune in on Monday nights, folks. She has some wonderful guests, too, and it will be interesting show, as always. Wednesday nights from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Paranormal Experience with host Kat Hobson. She always has a terrific lineup. They're fantastic shows with great information, amazing guests. You'll want to tune in, let's say, every night this week, make 8 p.m. your WBHM, tune-in time. Because there's some fantastic shows. And I want to say, friends and folks out there, as we come to the close of our show tonight, I want to thank all of you, our listening friends out there, for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to our live broadcast. Thank you all so much. I hope you all have a great evening and a fantastic weekend. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.